Now to another soldier. Coming up now, returning to the PM's official visit to China, his second one in just 4 years in office. It's almost over now, the PM flying back tomorrow morning, yet it's hard not to think that Xi Jinping got exactly everything he would have wanted out of the trip. He's upset the Americans. Our Prime Minister's come across as subservient and, at least on the face of it, unwilling to raise any of the difficult issues that we should be raising with China. Joining me now for his assessment, former Army Director General, retired Brigadier Ian Langford. Ian, thank you for your time. I thought you'd be a really good bookend to this trip to give us some sort of assessment on not just the defence, but the strategic and I guess the alliance presentational issues after this 6-day visit. I mean, am I being too harsh? Was it all Xi Jinping's win and not much here for Australia? How would you have assessed things?
Well, thanks, Peter. Thanks for having me. I mean, as you outlined, a 6-day visit is a significant investment on the part of Australia, represented by our Prime Minister. And he went into this really focused on the economy, on trade, on diplomacy. I mean, we've had pandas, we've had tennis, we've had fashion, we've had steel diplomacy. We've had an attempt by our PM to raise the issue of maritime security, particularly as it relates to that Chinese flotilla off our east coast some months ago. That was politely rebuffed. And I think that's symptomatic of the broader context of this visit. So we've had certainly high-level engagement. We've had a reset that has been very polite, but the substantive aspects of the security dimension to our economic relationship with China missed a couple of opportunities. One is perhaps to put this into a broader context, to think about our other allies and partners in the region, to include the effects of the Japanese, the Koreans, and indeed the Americans themselves on Australia's two-way relationship with China, but also maybe even to have a conversation with the Chinese about what national security from Australia's perspective means in East and North Asia. And that invariably includes reinforcing the significance of AUKUS in Australia's national defence strategy, and in the context of our broader military alliance, the importance of Australia's national security and economic interests as it relates to being able to trade with China, but also reinforce our security credentials with our major allied partner.
You mentioned that reset at the top there. I mean, the only reason we've got this economic reset is because we've kowtowed, right? Everything they had on that infamous list of demands at the time, you know, dropping opposition to the Port of Darwin, undertaking a review of ASPI. There were a whole range of things that we said that we would do and we have done. Now, the only reason he changed his mind on the Port of Darwin, the Prime Minister was caught out the day before the opposition was making an announcement and threw it in an ABC interview. So we've got the reset until such time as China wants to sort of twist the screws, turn the screws on us, which is exactly what happened last time. Now, I spoke to an individual this week who said over 50 times in recent years, Xi has made it public to his people that they must prepare for war. Right? And when pushed on Taiwan on the trip, our Prime Minister's just, you know, coming up with lines about supporting the status quo. Give me your thoughts on the Taiwan question.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. I mean, if we go all the way back to the 17th and 19th Party Congresses, whenever President Xi speaks, he does so in really two aspects. One is to an international audience, signalling China's place in the world, which he sees as almost a unipolar moment in its rise and ascendancy eventually over the Americans, as per their ambition by 2050 at the latest. And then the other is his communication to his internal constituency, to Communist Party officials, but also to the PLA, to get ready and be ready from as early as 2027, which, again, he has made no secret. In the context of our Prime Minister and his visit this week, equally, I think much of his messaging, whilst ostensibly has been focused on Chinese diplomacy, it's also been focused on our own domestic audience. And he's tried to really reinforce, I think, his economic credentials. He's tried to really, I guess, make peace and solidify Chinese Australians as really ALP voters moving forward. And the question is, how do you reconcile that with the reality of our changing strategic circumstances? We have a national defence strategy that says one thing, and we have diplomacy and other elements of national power that seemingly are acting in contrast. So the future of Australia debate, the future of conflict debate, needs to reconcile the dimensions of our economic and our security relationships across the
And there was no coincidence that this was timed to occur at the same time as Talisman Sabre, was there?
No, I think again, I mean, where we saw the Chinese flotilla off the east coast some months ago, that also coincided with a visit to this country by the US Indo-Pacific Commander Admiral Paparo. So the Chinese don't stage any of these influence actions without it being choreographed in a broader context. So we have Talisman Sabre happening right now. It's 45,000 troops. It's ostensibly led by the West. It's also occurring coincidental to Chinese maritime militia and what I suspect would be intelligence collection off our east coast by virtue of this activity. And then, of course, that pressure also culminates in certainly how the Chinese behave and how diplomacy sort of plays out as part of this visit. So, we've got an interesting contrast between diplomacy at the very highest levels of government and, in fact, that the Americans are conducting in Australia, with Australia, what some are calling a rehearsal for future conflict in the Indo-Pacific from as early as 2027.
Wow. Give me your take on those comments by former US National Security Advisor John Bolton. He told The Australian that he actually thinks a meeting between Albanese and Trump right now can backfire and might even scuttle the AUKUS deal.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, John Bolton's been around a long time. He's a neoconservative. He's very much part of the Republican establishment, albeit not part of the MAGA constituency. But his comments, I think, sit in the context of there being some sort of public engagement between President Trump and Prime Minister Albanese, and were it to go south, that might have ramifications for how the President thinks about AUKUS going forward. So I think he's stressing that the hard work in the foreign policy and defence establishment needs to be done now. We need to be sort of, really working the Congress and the Senate and the US-Australia relationship outside the key leaders really needs to cement and consolidate what AUKUS means. And so that means that, eventually when the two leaders meet, they can have a conversation which pretty much de-risks AUKUS should it go wrong.
We'll see if that happens. Ian, thanks for your analysis. It's been terrific.